Week 3 is upon us. College football, we are rolling along here. SEC football and beyond. I'm Dan Matthews. He's Chris Landry. Find him on Twitter, at Landry Football. Find me on Twitter, at Dan Matthews, ATL, 1T in Matthews. For those of you out there keeping track, don't forget, you can listen to SEC football and beyond, as well as every other show that is on the Landry Football Podcast channel, like the Landry Football Podcast that you caught earlier on Thursday morning. Scout's Eye on college football, Scout's Eye on pro football, the Texas A&M football scouting report, which Chris did already this week with David Nuno of Texags Radio, as well as the Alabama football scouting report with Ryan Fowler of Tide 100.9 out of Tuscaloosa. Find those wherever you get your podcast needs, and the easiest way to, Chris, I can't say it enough, download the Southern Sports Today app. You get us, you get the Chuck Oliver Show, you get all football goodness coming right here to your device.
Absolutely. And look, if you're listening to this in a podcast form, let's remind you, too, you can join us live and participate. You can go LandryFootball.com, click on that bar at the top that says follow Chris on Twitch. Click on it. Folks, we're right there. We do this show live at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central on Mondays and Fridays. So you can join us. Hey, folks, this is how you interact. We want you to join us in the chat room. We want you to moan and groan about your team. We want you to brag about your team. We want you to ask questions. We do it live. We make a schedule just for you so that we can be there. So join us, will you? And spread the word about what we're doing, because we're excited. We're week 3 of college football, Dan, and we've got some good matchups. We're going to learn more about teams, and we want our fans to be a big part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We almost want our fans to be like the old Howard Stern listeners, fly plane banners and flyers everywhere and do all that and show up and prank golf tournaments, do all those different types of things. That's what we want you to do here for
PG,
SEC
PG, please. PG, please.
Of course.
Though.
Of course.
Howard wasn't exactly PG, but I'm with you.
Yeah, he definitely was not. But for the most part, though, let's get this thing viral. That is for sure. So that's how you can catch us right here, as, of course, we're getting into week 3 of college football. Chris, last week, a lot of people thinking wasn't the greatest games, but still some good games out there in the SEC and beyond. We'll get into those today. I know that you've touched on it on the Landry Football Podcast, as well as Scout's Eye on college football. I believe is where Scout's Eye is where you got the news on the show that Clay Helton out at SC. But if you will indulge me on that a little bit today, yes, Chris, I do want to get into that on the beyond portion. So we'll do that, as well as, like I said, for those of you the last couple of weeks who have known, or maybe you don't know how we do our games here, is we go pretty much in order from noon until night, but we leave out the marquee games until the end. So we're going to start today with New Mexico at Texas A&M. And then we will get into the marquee games at the end. So stick and stay for that, like Alabama at Florida, South Carolina at Georgia, and then, of course, Auburn's trip to Happy Valley. We will have all of those coming for you a little bit later on. But let's get news and notes right away. Chris, this one, what just an awful story out of your neck of the woods in Baton Rouge, where just seems like bad news has just been a constant, and this on the personal side is just awful, awful, awful. It is LSU to be without running backs coach Kevin Falk this weekend, likely for their game against Central Michigan. Falk dealing with the death of his daughter. Just horrible news. Our thoughts are with the Falk family.
Yeah, really are. It's just heartbreaking. I don't know that anything's worse in this world than losing a child. I had a good friend lose a 30-year-old son a couple of weeks ago. And to hear about Gavandre, it's really bad for the LSU family and the LSU coaching football operations family, Dan, because not only because of Kevin, she worked in the football office. So, sometimes you don't know the son or the daughter of a friend. You don't know them, but you know the person, so you ache. But now everybody there, all the secretaries, all the trainers, all the video folks, this is one of the student workers that happens to be Kevin's daughter. So it's like they lose this beautiful young girl that they have just is part of their family, that they all have a close relationship with. And it also happens to be Kevin's daughter. It's just it's heartbreaking beyond description. I just just prayers out to him. Man, it's just really, really tough. I'm at loss for words, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chris, kind of just to piggyback off what you just talked about right there, I think that people, when they look at a football team, they only think of the games, but it's just the organization that goes into it during the week. And then to your point, too, the amount of people that don't show up on the roster and aren't necessarily in the program either, that are part of the program, that you're with each other day in and day out. I mean, for 12, 16-hour days, that you become family. And obviously, in this case, as you just pointed out, that's absolutely the case here. So just awful news.
It is. We lost a good friend of mine, Floyd Reese, the former general manager of the Tennessee Titans, passed. And as I'm getting older, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but I was thinking there were 8 of us when we moved from Houston to Nashville, Dan. We had a small scouting staff. 8 of us were in that room when we drafted Steve McNair and Eddie George and start to build that team. 8 of us. I'm now the only person that's still around.
Wow.
Floyd, and Floyd was 73. That's still young. But Rich Sneed died in March. He was like 64, 65. And Glenn Cumby died years ago, was in his 50s. Now, C.O. Brocado, Mike Holovec, Doug Fesperman were still sad, but they were, they were late 80s. It's, it's more of a normal, natural, but it's things like that make you stop and realize, my God, all the hours that you mentioned that were in there, and the laughs, the arguments, everything, and it just doesn't seem that long ago, and they're all gone, and it just makes you realize in everything today. Lost, like I said, a friend of mine lost a 30-year-old son due to COVID 2 weeks ago. You listen to Kevin's art. It just makes you realize. So if you're inclined to keep a prayer out for Kevin, the Falk family, and everybody who's struggling right now, as we excited and talk about football, there are a lot of people that are struggling and suffering in the world that need our help and certainly need our prayers if you're inclined to do so. So anyway, not to bring anybody down, but it's certainly been something that's been on my mind. And as I get older, I get every time my sister sends me a text or calls, I said, "Oh my God, somebody else died from home." She's at the age, but it's just one of those details. But anyway,
yeah, no, definitely check in on those you love and let them know that you care about them. Just because it's one of those things that you never want to have the regrets of not letting them know. So it's a lesson that I've learned in the past and hope to not have to learn as much in the future. Dan Mullen, let's get to the football side, Chris. Dan Mullen says the QBs, quote, know the plan for Saturday against Alabama. That's Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. It does sound like the latter is going to be able to go in the game after that hamstring issue that kind of flared up on him against South Florida.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with how Dan's handling it publicly. Now, how they play out on the field and who plays and how much, that's maybe, I think, more for debate. He's not obligated to tell you what he's going to do. In fact, it's strategically a disadvantage if he does. I think, though, what would concern me is, that is the type of injury for Anthony Richardson I'm talking about. That is an aggravating one. So, you got to be careful by all right, this is our guy, we're going to go with him. And then, I think you need to build up both of them because I think you're going to need both of them. Both of them are runners. I know Dan. I think Dan absolutely knows that Anthony Richardson gives him a little bit more in the passing game, and he's a little bit bigger and he can do things. But I think, again, he believes he's going to need both. It's going to be about running the football this year. He's got 2 running quarterbacks. They don't have to run a different system. This is not like having a drop back guy and a run guy. It's a guy that runs the same system. So I get it. People are, you better play Anthony Richardson. My God, if it's Emory Jones, I don't know what Dan's doing. I just think relax, take a chill pill. I think he knows it. And I think if it's not Anthony Richardson, it's probably because that is an aggravating injury that could maybe limit his snaps. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have to see. And again, in the marquee games segment of the show, we will get into that, talking about Alabama and Florida. That will be a major storyline for that one. Finally, Chris, again, like I said, let's go beyond just for a second. Urban Meyer saying no chance to USC, as USC, of course, now looking for a new head coach. And the funny thing is those of you who are watching us on Twitch right now, you can see my mic flag 680, and I was on with Matt and the guys earlier, Chernoff, the afternoon guys that you joined. And I brought up the point that I said, it seems like we always go to the same names whenever a job like this comes open, and even in the NFL too, because even with what we consider to be marquee jobs, the Cowboys, if the Steelers ever had an opening, I'm sure the Steelers would be on this list. But, the Dolphins, or I don't know, wherever there's a roster in the NFL that it seemed like in the 2010s that was there ready to compete, whose name always came up? Bill Cowher or John Gruden. Everybody always went to Cowher or Gruden. And we kind of do the same thing in college football too, where now you've got Urban Meyer having to answer and say no chance. And really, the fact that he even answered it, you're going to parse words. If he looks straight into the camera and says it, oh, it's rehearsed. He knew that was coming. He looked down, as people are saying, oh, well, we saw this at Ohio State. And I get it, but it's also to the certain point too, Chris, where why would he take the NFL job if indeed there was a possibility of this happening in the first place? Because I think we all had to know the way that the politics and the dynamics are in South Central Los Angeles with USC. Clay Helton was never long for that job. He was always a placeholder. So this job, it was not necessarily a matter of if you were going to replace him. It was a matter of when.
Absolutely. You hit on a couple of things that I think that people are not focusing on enough. And that is, I don't know for a fact that USC had specific conversations with Urban Meyer, but the conversation was out there about Urban Meyer to USC late last year, right? Now, there are two things. My understanding, Carol Falk, the president at USC, a no-go on Urban Meyer because of the whole Zach Smith deal. The old Zach Smith.
Right.
Now, I don't know if anything's changed with that. I can't speak to that. So my understanding is that never got anywhere. And so, to your point, so if she wasn't interested, or if she was maybe not thrilled about it but would be okay with it, and Urban wasn't interested, now why would you be? I don't think. The other thing is, I do know, because I do know that he had a chance at Texas if he wanted it. But the last conversations that I've had, and people that have really talked to him in detail about it, then the whole NIL, he was not real comfortable with it. And the reason why he left Ohio State was because of that problem with the president. And so the politics at Texas, and I'm just, A, I don't think he has any interest. B, I'm not sure that USC has the interest that the fan base and the media thinks, because the people that are doing the hiring, I think that lady president is not interested. Now, maybe she's changed her mind. Maybe, they've had a lot of problems on there on that campus. So I don't think there's anything to it. But to the point of, well, then why ask the guy?
Right.
I mean, it's like, what's he say? I haven't thought about it, but you know what? After I get done with my meetings today, I'm going to give them a buzz and see what they got going and maybe what they might pay. I'm open to talk. I mean, you're going to get killed if you say that. If you say absolutely not, I don't believe them. I mean, I'm not defending them because, friends and whatnot, but it's like Nick Saban. Well, we want to hear that you're not going to be the coach at Alabama. Well, he said, I'm not going to be the coach at Alabama. You see, he lied. Well, quit asking the damn question. Pardon my French. Yeah. I mean, ask me the questions. I'll tell you no lies. So if you know they're not going to be honest with you, well, we got to ask the question. Well, if you got to ask the question, Mr. Journalist, then what do you expect? The honest answer will be grilled. An evasive answer will be grilled. What about Mario Cristobal? I got asked on a radio show, and he said, "Go Ducks." And I said, well, would you say go Ducks? He said, I don't know why you asked me on this interview and it's like there again, it's just, I get it. We're in this gotcha clickbait world.
Sure.
There's no right answer for the guy to have, for any of these guys to have.
Right.
I mean, if there's an opening at the end of the year is when they're going to fill it, things could change, and people that are not interested might. People that are interested now might not be. Take a chill pill, folks. This is a marathon. You're not 100-yard dash to naming that head coach. It ain't happening anytime soon, I'm telling you.
Here's the other thing is, too, that I think people get lost in the details is that, well, a coach lied. He told us, he hasn't had any conversations with them or anything like that. He himself has not, but Jimmy Sexton has, and other people have, and that's why you pay your agent. Your agent is supposed to do the behind the scenes, the legwork, and all of that kind of stuff. But real quick, Chris, before we get to the games on this, that I wanted to get in on this, and I brought this up on the Chuck Oliver show on Thursday, and that is, I think in certain ways, this next head coach is going to need to go on Shark Tank. And let me explain. USC is not like Alabama. It's not like Texas. It's not like Florida. It's not like any of these other schools where you do have people at those schools that don't need as much convincing, even Georgia to a certain point when Kirby Smart was hired on there, because they were behind the times in terms of facilities, indoor practice facility, weight room, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they had all of that, but just not what others had. Kirby got there and basically told them, you're behind the times. And if you want to be able to compete with Nick in Tuscaloosa or with Jimbo, who at the time was down in Tallahassee, but you get my point. If you want to be able to compete and win, you got to build these things. And shortly thereafter, not only when he got hired, they got the indoor facility. They got the plans, and now it's built for the whole football facility there. That's going to be what the next head coach needs to do, and I think he needs to be lockstep with Mike Bone, the athletic director, whoever is in charge of fundraising there at USC, and say, look, we can have the academic standards, we can have everything that USC is, but if you want to see the Coliseum filled again and want this to be the attraction in Los Angeles, we got to get we got to get with the times. Chris, I mean, you can't tell me that a huge catalyst for this happening was that Chip Kelly has finally gotten things going over in Westwood too,
and Oregon. Those two,
and Oregon, where yeah, you've had Oregon even going back to the Mike Bellotti days, coming into Los Angeles and Orange County and getting players. That shouldn't happen. I mean, I get wanting to get out of where you grew up. That's fine, but Eugene, Oregon over Los Angeles, I'm not following that one. So I think that's going to be a major selling point. And the Alabama part of it as well is, remember, Chris, the similar thing in the presence of the moment. Alabama will never be the same, even with Nick Saban. 15 years later, billions of dollars in economic impact there in the Tuscaloosa area. The admission standards have risen at Alabama. The attendance has risen at Alabama. So you try to tell me that football doesn't matter and that you don't need all the facilities and all that kind of stuff, you're living in the past if you believe that.
Yeah, and I think Mike Bone is a traditional athletic director that's got them on the right track. Now, they are out of Heritage Hall, and they've got a nice new football facility over there now. And for people who don't know or not familiar with USC, the area around the campus was always like the bad area. I mean, I was on the practice field many times over there where I'd hear gunshots because it wasn't Temple, but it was pretty bad. I mean, believe it or not, they've cleaned that area out. It's kind of like, to give you and it's not. You're very familiar with LSU, the north part of campus. Remember how bad that was? It was like, not. You come now, you've been a recent, it's all cleaned out with like the high rises and night. They've doing a lot of that. And they are starting to do things. They were always behind the times in terms of recruiting, because anybody in the the greater Los Angeles area, they would always wait to get an offer from USC. So USC would go in and they would always be late to offer. Now that's changed with the new early commitments, the new signing day, early signing day. And so having more people on staff, the graphics department, they're doing some of those things and modernizing it. And you're right. They're going to have somebody that, if nothing else, comes in and says, we need to fix this. We need to clean it. We need to get it on the right track. There's no doubt that would flip the script to LSU from being a potential to a power was Mark Emmert and Nick Saban. They put the infrastructure in, and you know what? They were around for one title, but the success of the facilities and everything on campus, which you're very familiar with, is directly correlated to Mark Emmert, who I know is getting grilled for NCAA work, but was probably the best thing that ever happened to LSU, because I was really involved in Joe Dean was one of my best friends. Worked for him and loved. But God, he was so tight. I mean, if he swallowed a quarter, only 2 dimes would come out. It was just, and it was hard to get things done. Mark Emmert said because I was pushing Nick to get the job. I never told you the story, but I got Bill Orangebarger to call Nick Saban. Bill Orangebarger didn't know Nick Saban and vice versa, but he had respect for Bill Orangebarger, and Bill Orangebarger told him, it's the best job I've ever had in my life. And I, because Nick wasn't really, you're an LSU guy, but we're pushing all that to him. Well, he goes there and he had legal pad of things that he wanted. And Emmert said, done, 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 and done. And Jimmy Sexton, to tell you how times have changed, Jimmy Sexton said, he whispered, told Mark, he says, it's going to take between 800 and 1.2 to get Saban. 800,000 and 1.2. And remember, this was the highest paid coach in the country.
Yes, that's a bargain now.
And Joe Dean called Mark Emmert and he says, I think I can get him for $950. And Mark Emmert said, Joe, quit bleeping around and do the deal for 1.2. He says, we're going to sit there and we're going to get him. He asked for a new academic center, a football ops, which he, by the way, never moved in, a new athlete. He says, and we're gonna haggle over. But that was Joe. Joe came in after Bob Broadhead, and Joe's Super Bowl was, if he can find $50 in the couch, he had a great day, by God, and he was excited about it. And it changed then. And so my point is that, to your point, is USC, they've got money, they can do it right. They've got to know how to do it, and they need somebody that can build that culture and do it. Clay Helton's a nice guy that's going to get along and do whatever the heck you ask him to do, but they need a visionary that's going to run that program like Ohio State, like Clemson, like Alabama, like Georgia, et al., because that's what USC should be, could be, and I'm telling you, that's also what the Pac-12 needs. And that'll flip the script and start to put that, whole television contracts and all that. Don't believe that doesn't have a big picture effect on where things are going to go, because USC is one of the great jobs. If you don't mind the traffic, you don't mind the cost of living, and they've had, like when Pete Carroll was there, Norm Chow, they had cost of living allowances. They paid rental property for those coaches to live. So sometimes you got to do that because it's ridiculous costs over there. Ridiculous. But, you gotta do what they're willing to do that at USC, and they need to have the right visionary to lead them to do that.
Well, I mean, one thing we know about rich people and people in leadership, Chris, you show them tangible results or at least a path to success, and usually they'll be on your side. It's so funny too. I mean, it goes back to, I remember years ago being with my dad, and we were at an event, and Bill Yeoman, the old University of Houston coach, was there talking, and he talked about the veer, the triple option veer. And he talked about the university president. When people were like, well, who did the schedule? The university president said, I did. I want us on television as much as possible. Because remember, back in those times, you were on television. That was it. Now, it's one of those that if you get the marquee times or the networks or all those different types of things. So it's definitely something that I think is going to be number one. What the next head coach there at USC has to do is he's got to be able to say, hey, we've got to make sure that our facilities and our support, I need you guys. I need administration to be behind this program and show USC football matters. So, and I think the other part too, just before we get into the games really quick, it sounds like, and I can't remember if you said it or who said it, that it finally sounds like they've got things right in terms of the athletic leadership with Mike Bone. It's not a former player. It's not somebody. Hey, they were a USC person, so they're going to know exactly what we need around here. It's like times have changed. You can't just put the former coach or the former player in the athletic director chair. You got to have somebody that's pretty business savvy.
Do you know that Lynn Swann not only quietly, it's a private school now, so you don't get the Freedom of Information Act. Right. He silently got Clay Helton an extension and guaranteed his contract. I didn't realize this. I was told that Lynn Swann, when he was athletic director, wasn't even around. He was mostly spent his time in Pennsylvania at his house. He wasn't even on campus half the time as the athletic director. That's how ridiculous it was. But that's get Tommy Trojan in there, and so anyway,
it can't happen.
So much for that.
And speaking of, remember I showed the device earlier, my phone. The athletic administrator's worst nightmare is when the name Jimmy Sexton comes across on the phone, because it's like, I'm gonna be spending money whether I want to or not. But let's get into some of the games this weekend. Week 3 in college football. Week 3 in the SEC. Full slate of games ahead. Chris, I want to start first with the first career start of Zach Calzada at Texas A&M. The Aggies hosting New Mexico. The Lobos bringing in quarterback Terry Wilson, which those of you in the SEC should be familiar with, the former Kentucky quarterback. But the Aggies, a 29.5-point favorite for this one in College Station.
I'll be looking to see how comfortable Zach gets in going through his progressions, absorbing a game plan for the entire week. Look, this New Mexico team, for their level, defends the run pretty well. They want to establish the run. They want to do all that. But everything that they're going to do, I think they want to work a lot on getting Zach comfortable, because being able to see it from an execution and a repetition standpoint is important. I think it's important. And I always say, people talk about, well, look ahead to the next. You better not look ahead. You better put in some of your Arkansas stuff this week and be ready to go, because this is an opportunity to sharpen the edges so that you're as prepared as you can possibly be for Arkansas next week. That's what I'll be looking at in this game. And it's not about what the margin of victory is or the number of stats, but how they look, how he does things, how clean he is, how confused he is, how comfortable he is. Those are the things I'm looking for in this game.
Yeah, I mean, what a tune-up for them. And we'll get to Arkansas here in just a second. But I think the thing for A&M in this one too, Chris, is going to have to be that you need to have both sides of the football line of scrimmage ready to go. Because as we saw last week with Arkansas, they're going to be ready, and they're going to have some punch for them up in Arlington.
No doubt about it. And, they're going to try to run the football, and they'll be able to run the football better against this front than Colorado's. But, part of it is you're going to have some threat in the passing game. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out this week. So expect a big win. Folks, if you're liking to look at, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's that 29.5, it's going to meet that or not. I know you care out there if you're putting money on it, but the reality is for A&M, I'd just be careful about that, because how they're going to play it is going to be more about trying to get the quarterback comfortable. So A&M win big. I don't know. I'll let you folks out there decide where, if you want to put some money on it. I'd stay away with it from personally in terms of the 29.5.
Yeah, shout out to our friends at BetUS too, as you heard from them.
Yeah, check them out. They'll know.
Absolutely. Use those promo codes too.
Amen.
Give you some extra money. Tennessee Tech at Tennessee. No line in this one with a FCS team going up to Rocky Top. But after last week for Tennessee, really, Chris, I think we could say with that game at Pitt, I know we covered it earlier in the week, but a pretty gritty performance by Tennessee, all things considered, where you probably team lineup against each other. Pitt was a better football team, but still the Vols almost able to pull that one out despite quarterback play being inconsistent for them.
Yeah, you want to see more consistency. You want to see the running game get going. Look, this is a Tennessee Tech team that hadn't found a way to score yet. So this is, to me, a case of how you build on it. they're frustrated in Knoxville that, they let a game get away. And, I thought they played pretty well last week. But, and I actually thought they created turnovers. And to me, I thought they did a really good job against Pitt. I thought Pitt had some real advantages, and I thought Tennessee hung in there. But this is going to be one in which, they fine-tune and get ready for see what Tennessee can do in the conference. This is not a very good Tennessee Tech team.
Yeah, so likely a 2-1 start to the season for the Volunteers. Let's go to Baton Rouge, where you are, Chris. Central Michigan, Jim McElwain coming into town with the Chippewas to take on LSU. Chris, I got to tell you, we had a good buddy, Matt Moscona from ESPN 104.5 there in Baton Rouge.
Matt does great work.
He does, absolutely. Celebrate all of his catalog. But Matt was on with us talking about, what's the mood of the fan base now? What's the mood of him after last week's game against McNeese State? Chris, he said felt even worse about a win than the loss the week prior to UCLA.
Yeah, Matt deals with the fans all the time, people calling in and tweeting in the different ways that he gets to interact with it. How LSU fans are. That UCLA loss was bad. They'll live it. And look, that offense was a mess, and we described it Tuesday on the Monday show live that dropped on Tuesday. The offensive performance against McNeese State was not good at all. And this is a better opponent. I'm going to tell you what the fear is. The fear is among the fan base. The fear, I said it 3 times. I'm going to say it one more time. The fear is that they might lose this game. And I'm not ready to go there, but I could see where the concern is going to be. And I think LSU wins it because I think they win it with their defense. But, so all right, what are you looking for? I want to see what this offense can do. Can it progress? Can it get any better? Because, look, this is a better opponent than last week. Jim McElwain's coming in. Man, I don't know. This is an ugly situation. They got Mississippi State next week. They've got to get a better vibe going on. They don't have a running game. It starts up front, the running backs. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Can that be improved upon? That's all I'm looking for. Obviously, if it's a close game and LSU is in a danger of losing it, if LSU loses it, then we can really begin to start to have the conversations about what, because this would be like Troy. This would be the inevitable, and any little hope is going out the door. Nobody expects that. I mean, most people are saying, I don't see any more than 5 wins. I mean, I can't go. I wait till dark to go get my mail, because if I go outside, I can't get outside with somebody saying, have they fired him yet? I'm like, I don't know. I hadn't visited campus. That's the degree of vitriol and frustration level in Baton Rouge right now.
Well, I mean, and also too, Chris, because if there's one thing that me and you know about LSU, it's never a question of talent. And I think that's the fans' frustration, is that you were more talented than UCLA. You have earlier this week, I think I read this right from Jacques Doucet, local TV guy there, putting it out on Twitter, that I guess Keishon Butte admitted, yeah, we probably didn't take UCLA or didn't, give them enough credit for how good they could be. How can that come out of someone's mouth? Like, and it's also too, I mean, the excuses that I've heard about, well, injuries, all these different things. Chris, I'll give credit where credit's due for bringing this up, but good buddy Josh Pate, late kick Josh over there on 24/7. That's a strength and conditioning thing. How do you not have guys healthy for the start of the season?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that are really concerning about what is leading to the performance. The things that you refer to, why is that? Lack of discipline in the program, lack of accountability in the program, all the things we talk about, the elite programs that they focus on, you don't see that. And I've talked about it a bunch, and it's maybe not popular, or it hasn't been popular, but even some of those things that were there in the championship year but get covered up because you have great team leadership and you're able to have success on the field, and that builds the momentum. That same sort of atmosphere, though, when you don't win, that's when you get a lot of guys start looking out for their future. I'm a great athlete. I'm a pro prospect. I don't want to get injured. People get in their ear. And when you don't have that type of discipline and focus, and you don't have that solid foundation of discipline, it can go the other way. And, all summer, talking about it, LSU was one of the, boy, if that gets off to a bad start, that's one place you need to look at for going to heck in a handbasket real quick. And right now, that's where it's headed. And they need to stick a dike in the dam because right now, literally and figuratively, they're taking on water, and they got to have something positive happen. A loss here would really cripple them. A bad performance would be negative. But again, it's going to be awfully tough if you start looking at their schedule. How the heck are they going to come away with 8 wins? I don't know that anybody can create a scenario where that would happen now. But yet, anything other than that, I think there's some real concern. So this is a big game, bigger than, for the reasons that we talked about, for the quality of lifestyle of the people in that operations building. This is a big game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's one of those where you hope that talent takes over if you're an LSU fan, because my gosh, there's plenty of talent in that building, on that roster. And, the way they've recruited the last few years, it continues. And the group that they supposedly have coming in still. So, like I said, talent's never an issue. Now you just hope that you have the coaches that can coach up the talent. That's the other issue there in Baton Rouge. Let's go to Lexington. Chattanooga going to be taking on the Wildcats of Kentucky. A very impressive win last week for Mark Stoops' team. Will Levis, the quarterback, looking good through the first 2 games this season. Chris, how are we seeing this one?
Yeah, obviously a big, Kentucky win here. Chattanooga is a pretty good program. They played pretty well from the little bit I've seen of them, create some turnovers. But this is the one thing about it in Kentucky, and we went over it a little bit early in the week in the first show of the week. Kentucky on film looked like they were 17 points better than Missouri. They didn't play, the turnovers and the mistakes made that game closer. But the good Kentucky was hampered by the bad Kentucky, the mistakes. This is one of those that they're going to win big, but it's just by playing a clean game. So that's going to determine, the margin of victory and how good can this team be. I mean, I think it can be really good, but they can't have the turnovers. The one thing I see that they're lacking, they need a second receiver to step up. Now, Josh Ali's got to get some off the field issues straightened out, and he's got some issues there, but he's got to perform better. Somebody's got to step up opposite of Wandale Robinson. But this is a really good team that I'm curious to see how they progress and how they're going to match up against Florida going forward. But this is a tune-up game, no question.
Another game for a team taking on somebody that probably they should have no real problem with. That is Missouri hosting Southeast Missouri State. If I'm not mistaken, is that Petrino?
Yes, Simo. They've looked pretty good creating some turnovers. So they might be able to move the football a little bit, but I don't know. This is a get-well game for Missouri. I think maybe some late points or something like that, but this is the one thing that concerns me about Mizzou is, boy, that defensive line took a beating against Kentucky. They did not play well. I'm curious to see, can they develop some depth? Can they get a little bit better into the teeth of SEC play? But yeah, Missouri wins big here. This is going to be a tough one for them.
Georgia Southern is at number 20. Arkansas Hogs, a 23.5-point favorite for this one in Fayetteville.
Yes, sir. It's going to be
very good.
That's my best Sam Pitman. They were sloppy in the first half against Rice. Is that the first week type of game or lack of competitive focus in that game? Don't know. This will be one of those that we can see. Now, just be careful. From an assignment standpoint, Georgia Southern gets the quarterback back. It'll test your discipline. Because if you don't play them from an assignment standpoint well defensively, they can embarrass you with a big play. Now, can they do it consistently and really threaten to beat you? Well, potentially they could. I don't think they will. Florida Atlantic, just hammered them. So, listen, I think that Arkansas takes care of business, but don't get sloppy. Don't develop bad habits if you're Arkansas. Play strong, play well. I want to see what this Arkansas team can do in the passing game, Dan. Look, I'm impressed with what they've done. I love them at the line of scrimmage. I love the quarterback in the run game. Love the way they're playing on defense. They're not going to be able to – their fans are getting really excited, and we'll talk about it next week as it relates to A&M. Mm-hmm. But they've got to get more out of the passing game if they're going to do more than just live off of we beat Texas and then,
right,
maybe here or there. That's the thing. So let's see if they can do and work out some things in the passing game. Great receiver. Just don't know that they have enough of a passing offense to be a big factor against the best teams in the West, which, quite frankly, outside of Alabama, I'm not sure who the best team is. So, and Arkansas's in the mix, but I'm not quite sure that I'd put them 2 or 3 yet, but we'll see.
It's almost like a 3-tier level right now in the West where, you've got obviously the top, we know who it is, but then the second right there, it's some that, yeah, hey, they look pretty good. But then I think, 1 or 2 weeks of bad football, they could see them falling out of that. And it's something that I think is an interesting storyline in the SEC right now. But to your point, though, you're exactly right, Chris. Alabama, you're going to need to throw the football. Georgia, you're going to need to throw the football. Ole Miss, you're going to need to throw the football.
Absolutely.
Mississippi State, the list goes on and on. So to your point there.
And they beat Ole Miss last year. I wouldn't count on it this year if you're Arkansas, as you mentioned, if they can't throw the football a little bit better, because you can really make Ole Miss go the length of the field and frustrate them. They're still going to score points and likely going to score 30 on you at least. Are you going to make enough plays in the passing game, or can you completely play keep away with them long enough? That's the formula right now to pull off a game like an explosive offense in Ole Miss and, even against A&M, and I think the only reason why we don't look at A&M as the clear number 2 is because we don't know yet about the quarterback. I would say that it's Ole Miss and A&M, and one's got question marks on defense and one we got a question mark about the passing game. So I think we're between Arkansas and A&M next week and, Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to start to figure this out as we always do.
Speaking of Arkansas and another coach that we're going to talk about here just coming up, did you know that Willie Fritz and Sam Pitman were college teammates?
I did.
Pittsburgh State Gorillas.
Pittsburgh State Gorillas, and Willie's. Willie's done a really good job there, and I know we'll talk about it when they've got Ole Miss this week. But yeah, the Pittsburgh State Gorillas. I've been there a few times. What a great program they have. It's great to see a place like that really just puts so much emphasis and have that much support. It's kind of like it's like one of those elite Texas high schools that, the facilities are good. We're proud of it. We're going to put money into it. And it's kind of the atmosphere of it, really do a good job there.
And by the way, too, for those of you listening out there, it's without an H at the end. It's not
correct.
In Pennsylvania. Right in the middle of America, right there in Kansas.
Right in Kansas. And part of that Jayhawk League that, has been so successful with the JUCOs.
All right, so let's get to actually Willie Fritz's Tulane Green Wave, because they're going to be at Ole Miss, 14-point favorite for the Rebels this weekend in Oxford, Mississippi. I think that we are going to see, Chris, a Tulane team that goes in there with a lot of confidence. After a couple of weeks ago, they're going to finally return home next week, so they'll have that excitement there too. But I think that you get a program like Tulane saying, "Hey, we went toe-to-toe with a team that might be a national title contender this year. Why can't we go into Oxford and make something happen this weekend?"
Yeah, playing with a lot of confidence. Lane Kiffin said, Tulane looks like an SEC team. For some of our younger listeners, you may not know, but Tulane was a member of the SEC. They won the SEC in 1934, 39, and 43 before they opted to get out. Not sure that was a good mistake. Georgia Tech was also in the SEC at that time.
Probably needed Doc Brown and Marty to go back then and say, "Hey, sit tight.
Yeah. Tulane's actually, they played in the Rose Bowl. They were a power. Tulane was back in the day. But this Willie's done a good job. Talking about Willie Fritz has really done a good job. Like the way he coaches on offense, it's the defense. They've got a couple of draft prospects on their defensive line. It's just going to be hard. Now, again, you played a great offense in Oklahoma, and you handle that well. Right now, listen, Oklahoma's going to get better. That game didn't define Oklahoma. I think Ole Miss is going to be a tougher challenge because they're just playing better. I hope that this game is close. I hope it's competitive. Tulane's been good offensively the first couple of weeks. I'm more interested, pardon me, in how Ole Miss plays and matches up defensively here. I think Ole Miss will win it. I think they'll win it with a lot of offense. But how much better is this Ole Miss defense? We don't know yet. I think this will be a challenge schematically, discipline-wise, because I think Willie knows how to find those pressure points in front and be able to run the football. So that's what I'm looking for, is I think Ole Miss is going to win. How they win it, what they do. This might be one of those games where you look at the over and say, it's 76. Maybe so. I don't know that I'd go with it. It's a 14-point
14
margin.
points Ole Miss.
And I think I would, if I had to go with it, I'd probably lean with Ole Miss a little more than that. But I'm really more convinced that the over is the play here. But that's kind of how I see it and what I'm looking for in the game.
All right, let's go to Memphis, just up the road from Oxford, Mississippi, and it's going to be Mississippi State at Memphis. Chris, this one going to be a closer game than I think that some people would possibly believe, because the point spread for this one, Mississippi State only favored by 3. Might we have somebody on upset alert this weekend?
We do, and again, it's part of the, what are we going to see with Mississippi State? Great performance against NC State. Was the Louisiana Tech game the first game, sloppiness that they figured out? Or is Mississippi State onto something? I thought they played really good defensively. I mentioned that earlier in the week. Man, that stuck out to me. That defense, the linebackers in particular, played so well against NC State's run game. So if you look at that, and again, you never know what you have each week. But that's an indicator that this is a better team, and you should be able to take care of business if you're Mississippi State. However, you kind of alluded to it. The defense is a work in progress for Memphis, but they can move the football a little bit better and maybe a little bit more of a spread out attacking style. So this might get a little interesting. This might spread out Mississippi State and give them some things that they don't like to do. I just don't know that Memphis can stop the passing game enough to win it. But if they can get some turnovers, that's the great equalizer. So that's the key for the potential upset. Although I'm going to stick with Mississippi State here in this one. I think I know they're the better team. I just don't know if they'll play the best or play the smartest. That's always the only variable that concerns me with Mike's teams.
Final one before we get to the marquee matchups this weekend. It's Stanford at Vanderbilt. The Cardinal are a 12-point favorite for this one. Chris, I have to believe that this one was scheduled in mind with this was going to be the Derrick Mason Bowl. I guess we could still call it the Derrick Mason Bowl, even though now he is going to be up in State College, Pennsylvania, not in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's right. Yeah, and he'll be playing. You won't even get to watch it. It's not like it's an early game. I tell you what I was impressed by. Stanford and Vanderbilt stepping up this past week. Vanderbilt, I know Colorado State's not playing well, but Vanderbilt got down 14-0. We talked about this early in the week as well. I mean, I thought, here we go. They got off the mat. They fought. They did a really nice job making some plays in the passing game, getting it done. But how about Stanford? I mean, they couldn't find their rear end with two hands in their first week against Kansas State. Kansas State whipped them. I mean, just whipped them. And, of course, it was the final straw for Clay Helton, because it was not just that Stanford beat USC. It's how they beat them. They were more physical, which is not a surprise because Stanford in the past has been physical and USC under Clay has not. But, man, it was like they were running by them. They were running past them. And I'm like, good Lord, what a great job. Stanford stepped up, but you're trying to think, what do you have here? So, Tanner McKee, it had showed a lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2. I certainly like Stanford's ability here. I like them a little better here. Vanderbilt's just not good at all, and I think Colorado State's not. I think Stanford wins. I think the point margin is like 12.
Yeah.
I think this is a 14-17 point win for Stanford, but we'll see. Stanford's been a little up and down. I just think they're quite a bit better than Vandy, so we'll see if the Commodores can hang in.
Marquee matchup time. We will get to Alabama and Florida last. Let's start first with South Carolina at Georgia. Wow. The Dogs are a massive favorite for this one, Chris. South Carolina, a 31.5-point underdog. The question is with them, is it Zeb Nolan or is it Luke Doty? But I think the even larger question from that is, will it matter?
No, it could be either one of those two. It could be Stetson Bennett. Hell, it could be Tony Bennett. It doesn't matter. This, to me...
Fly me to the moon.
Fly me to the moon. I think that's what... I don't know that cover, but, I mean, it's going to be close. I mean, it's going to be in that right. I do not think this South Carolina team is very good. I don't like to do the transitive property thing because things are different but by comparison, that UAB team that Georgia beat is better than South Carolina, I think.
Wow.
I don't think South Carolina is very good. They didn't look very good against East Carolina. Even week one, they were not very good. I'm happy for them. They got wins. But their people are actually buying in that this is a lookout. You know, we did 2 years ago. Oh, man, we did. Dude, I mean, there is no – I mean, this is one that Georgia, like last week, can't get bored, can't get sloppy, can't develop bad habits. But this is a name-your-score game. 30 sounds good to me in terms of a margin. I think it's in that range. I mean, look, I mean, am I like going to be like, 28? It's really, I think buyer beware on this one, folks. I wouldn't be, I don't know that I would lay that many points, but if you had to put a few bucks on it, I would not lay it on South Carolina. I don't think they can hold down Georgia, and I just don't think they can score against this Georgia defense. I would be curious to see. I'd be willing to put some points on whether they can score 10 points or 13 points against Georgia. I think that is about the best they could do. I think this is a mismatch game to the point that I don't even think it's a, if we can sell it because it's Georgia, South Carolina. I see that Georgia UAB. I see it the same way as I saw Georgia UAB last week. That's what I think.
Yeah, and remember, too, I mean, this is a Georgia defense who has only given up 3 points this season because the 7 points that they gave up last week was the pick six there towards the end of the game, garbage time against UAB. And then remember, too, Chris, there needs to be an asterisk next to that 3 because that 3 was after a turnover by Georgia's offense. So this has really been a defense that's looked pretty darn good in the first couple of games. So we'll see if that continues on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think, to clarify, I mean, I think like 10 or 13 points. I'm talking garbage time, playing a lot of guys. I'm thinking after Georgia's put up 40 on them or 30 or whatever it is, I think they named their score. I think this game, this margin of victory is going to be whatever Georgia wants it to be and how well they play. I mean, that's the variable there because I'll be honest with you, if South Carolina plays their best game, I still don't think it's anywhere less than a 20, 24-point margin of victory. I really do. That's how I see it, both from a Georgia standpoint, but both from South Carolina. So I get the fan hype and all that about, we're excited they're 2-0. They're just not a very good team, in my opinion. I don't know that there are many wins on South Carolina's schedule. This sure as heck ain't one of them.
Yeah. It is going to be one that I'm sure Georgia fans ready to get into conference play and get a huge win. And judging off what you just said right there, I think they will have their wishes met. 22nd ranked Auburn taking on number 10 Penn State. Happy Valley is the place Saturday night there in Pennsylvania. Nittany Lions, a 5.5-point favorite. Chris, we talked about this, at least Chuck on Thursday started the Chuck Oliver show by talking about the margin of victory for Auburn in the first two games. And he had actually even asked me off air, goes, 100 and something to 10, what would you say is usually the case? I said, they're playing against two not very good teams. That's been the case with Auburn. They're going to be playing a very good Penn State team this weekend who, unlike last year, is off to a good start.
Yeah, first of all, I don't know how you feel. This game is the one that's most intriguing, certainly in the conference, and I think, well, even nationally. I think this game has a chance to be the most competitive, and I think we can learn the most because, for me, we learned something about Auburn because of what you just said. They haven't played good teams yet. And I also think this is a statement game for Penn State in the Big Ten because with Ohio State's troubles, and I'm not sure that Penn State can beat Ohio State. That's for another show and another time. But this game is an intriguing one. What I see out of Penn State is a team that's playing pretty good defensively. They defended the run game of Wisconsin pretty well. Offensively, Yurcich is doing a really good job. They seem to be getting it. Sean Clifford's protecting the football better, making better decisions. They weren't able to run the football well against Wisconsin, but they made enough big plays. This Auburn team is doing all they can do in the two games that they played. Alabama State and Akron are not good. Get it. But from an assignment, effort, technique, and execution standpoint, they've been really good. So they seem to me to be a better coach team. Look, I think, Moultrie and Banks have played pretty well. Bo Nix hasn't turned the football over. Bo Nix hasn't. Have you heard this? I bet you haven't heard this at all. Bo Nix doesn't play well on the road. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that continues. Is it a different Bo Nix? Different staff? Certainly, he's played well thus far. We just went over the opponent. So let's see. A lot to learn about here. Look, I don't think either one of these teams I don't know that I would put Auburn in the conversation of the second best in the West, even a contender. But I think they've got a chance to be competitive in this game, to take it into the fourth quarter. I don't know if they can. I mean, they can win it. I don't know if they will. But I'm curious to see how Bo Nix responds. They have better options as outlet receivers against pressure. I think they're doing a better job of pass protection. It's to me, it's two teams that I think are good. Neither one are great. And I'm just tickled as punch. I'm kind of going with kind of a I think Penn State. I mean, it's 6 points. I think that's right about it. I mean, I'm thinking like 31-23-ish. I think it's a one-possession game. It's close with both teams in the fourth quarter having a chance to win it. I think that Auburn will have some success on their defense, not a lot. I think Penn State will have some success, a lot of emotion, playing well. I like James Franklin's teams, big games, big moments, sideline decisions. I'm a little leery of James Franklin in that regard. But I think the staff is coming together. He's so staff dominant. I'm excited about this game. This is a game that I truly will tell you, honestly, I'm not going to be surprised who's going to win this game either way. I mean, I really could make a strong case for both. And I can't, for most of the games that we had today, I really can't. Most of it's just a margin of victory. This to me is a game that is in doubt. Forced to pick, I would go with Penn State, but I'm not real proud of it. I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, pick 'em game. It's one that's going to be a really good one to watch after this one that we see, 3:30 CBS game down in Gainesville. It's going to be number 1 Alabama at number 11 Florida. The Crimson Tide, 14.5-point favorites in this one. Chris, I could probably guess you're feeling the opposite in this one. So I guess really the question becomes, how does Florida give themselves a chance?
Yeah, I guess I kind of spilled the beans when I said that Auburn Penn State was most intriguing because, I want to say this, and I want it to be close. I haven't figured out how it's going to be close. What does Florida have to do? Well, they're going to have to utilize the quarterbacks in the run game. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have to be ultra successful. We talked about it earlier in the show. Anthony Richardson's going to have to be a factor. I think Emory Jones, maybe use them in a package together. I think the whole running game, they're going to have to force Alabama to defend an extra gap. They're going to have to bring Alabama out of their split safeties looks, and they're then can maybe have some one-on-one matchups without safety help to maybe make some big plays in the passing game. Can they do that enough? Well, Alabama's secondary, they've played a lot of people, but they've false stepped. They've committed penalties. They've not stayed in phase all the time, and they secondary hasn't graded out as well as their linebackers or their defensive front. Now, my understanding from the staff is that Will Anderson's a go, or at least they're thinking he's been practicing.
I don't know everybody I've talked with. Yeah,
I don't know how much, or whatever, but they got some healing halls over there in Tuscaloosa. I don't know, but I don't know that. Here's what I'm most interested in: what Florida's defense is going to do against the Alabama offense. So, how much better is this Florida defense on tape? I see some improvements there. Again, I still don't know if they can defend the A and the B gap against the run. They didn't do that last year. I mean, they got gashed by people and they had to outscore people. This is more of, we're going to have to make explosive plays out of the run game, going to have to get you to overplay the run so we make big plays in the passing game. And then can they hold up front? I mean, I think that Alabama will probably be able to run some, or if Florida's going to slow it down, they're going to have to play with a loaded front, and that's going to create some opportunities for Alabama in the passing game. Look, I don't know how great or how good this Alabama team is. Good. It's real good. I don't know that I would say that they've just been dominant in how they've graded out and played. They just are still better and have more answers. That's the best. They have more answers than just anybody that I've seen play this year. I just have much more questions about Florida here. And I just don't know. I hope this game is close. I give Dan Mullen a lot of credit. I just don't think we're going to see the 52-46 game that everybody's focusing on from last year. Not the same teams. I kind of see it almost more like I don't know what you think. I don't know, 38-20-ish type thing. I think it's something along those lines is where I see it. I hope it's close. I just don't see it being that close. And I just think they're too one-dimensional on offense, Florida. And I don't know that they can contain Alabama enough to keep them under 35. And I don't know that Florida can score 30 against this Alabama defense. So let's see. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, I can answer more questions that are asked about Alabama than I can about Florida. I've got more questions about Florida than I do about Alabama. So to your point, that's the way I see it. And I don't see a surprise factor in this at all. I mean, even Vegas telling you with 14 points there, Chris, they're saying the same thing, that they don't see that happening
in either. The swamp, folks.
Yeah, I mean,
14-point favorite in the swamp. Let that sink in.
Yeah, 14.5
favorite, 14.5 in the swamp.
Yeah,
wow,
that's unreal. It's unreal.
And I don't think Alabama's played their best ball. I really don't.
That's scary for everybody else out there. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's get us out of here on this. Normally we do a mailbag segment, and please, can't say it enough. Follow us on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Matthews, ATL, 1T in Matthews. Follow Chris on Twitter as well, at Landry Football. And also, speaking of Landry Football, become a member of LandryFootball.com if you hadn't done so already. Everything we've talked about today, the film room breakdowns, the analysis, the news, the notes, everything that you could ask for when it comes to pro football, college football, high school, recruiting. All of those things can be found right there at LandryFootball.com. And the membership, Chris, I mean, affordable doesn't even begin to say how affordable it is, right?
Yeah, it is. It's really inexpensive. It's less than $10 a month. If you take advantage of the year membership, it's less than that. And it gets all the breakdowns. So we'll go to the breakdowns like we do in here, but much more detail. Every team, every conference, college, pro, we got it for you. The complete breakdowns. And then what we love and we think is unique, Monday and Tuesdays, we have the film room recaps of all the games. So you really get a scouting, coaching viewpoint of the game of football, the news and notes, all the podcasts, everything. So we think it's a great value. We've had a good response. The best thing I can tell you is when people come, they stay. They really like it. So I'd encourage you to check it out, and please take advantage of the football season sale. It's the best offer we got going, and we think you're going to absolutely love it. If you just want to try it out for a month, you can do that. There's a lot of ways to get involved, and we say you like football, you're going to love LandryFootball.com. It's like having your own scouting or coaching department for less than a magazine subscription.
No doubt about it. Chris, some games this weekend also, too, just to kind of wrap up this edition of SEC football and beyond. Not going to go through them, but just, some of the games that you're going to be watching inside the Landry Lab this weekend. I know for me, that noon hour, wow, there are some really good games here in this noon slate. Just looking at it off the top of my head, I mean, Nebraska, Oklahoma, two name brands, but Oklahoma should handle that one. Really interested to see that Cincinnati game against Indiana, and then also to Virginia Tech at West Virginia. West Virginia favored at noon.
Yes, those are on my radar there. And you mentioned Nebraska, Oklahoma. Where's that gone? I can remember. I know you can't. 50 years ago, I remember watching that game in 1971, and that's going to be one of these games. I'll just mention this. I think Oklahoma's going to win big, and I'm not saying we're going to have a Clay Helton moment. But the optics of that, because there's going to be a lot of talk about the 50 years, and look where Oklahoma is, and look where Nebraska is. And I think this is going to, if this season finishes like it is, I think this is going to be the fate of Scott Frost. Not during the season, but probably towards the end. That's one I'm going to watch for that. Cincinnati's got Notre Dame after this. So this is as big a stretch as you can get. And two pretty good brands, but maybe not great teams. That's winnable. I will have on Monitor 3 Virginia Tech, West Virginia. I am curious. It'll be a little bit later, 1:30, Purdue, Notre Dame. That'll be interesting. I'll be keeping my eye out on Zach Calzada in Texas A&M and what's going on there. But in the second wave, it's Auburn, Florida, and Georgia Tech, Clemson. Don't ask me why, but I will. Mississippi State, Memphis. Northwestern, Duke, USC, Washington State. I want to see how they respond. I want to see Wake Forest and Florida State, and then Tulsa, Ohio State. So that will be on in the Landry Lab in the second wave. The third wave is where I get the Auburn, Penn State, and then I'll have South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, North Carolina. Yeah. Quarterback's playing really well there at Virginia, Carolina. That's a lot of fun. Tulane, Ole Miss, I'll be eyeing that. I'll have to keep an eye out on Central Michigan and LSU, Stanford, Vandy. I'm also going to keep an eye out, 8 o'clock start, Oklahoma State, Boise State. Yeah. Really intriguing to me. And listen, an underrated San Diego State team going up against Utah. And then the late night, maybe it's certainly one of my 4 feature games on Landry Football. They are Cincinnati, Indiana, Alabama, Florida, Auburn, Penn State, and Arizona State, BYU. This is not a conference game, but this will tell me a little bit about whether Arizona State may be, along with UCLA, are they the favorites in the South? Let's see what Utah, how much improvements they do, and let's see if there's any uprising with USC with the coaching change. But Iowa State, UNLV, I think they'll rebound. And then I don't know, Fresno State and UCLA, very underrated. That's a pretty good Fresno State team. I'll be watching that. That's on the Pac-12 network. So very few of us can actually see that. I don't know if you know. Half the state of California can't see that. And then I don't know how much I will stay up and watch San Jose State, Hawaii. That's a 12:30 Eastern time start. So I'd say go to bed and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, maybe if you're so inclined, maybe DVR that or find it later on YouTube, something like that. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be making that one either, Chris. It's a shame. It's a shame. It could be an instant classic, that's for sure. Well, Chris, appreciate the time as always. Appreciate all of you out there for listening to us as we get you into week 3 of the college football season. I want to thank Chris. I want to thank everybody for listening to this final edition of the week. SEC football and beyond. Have a great football weekend. Let's talk to you early next week.